Welcome.
Well, that worked out all right.
So our phones were being stubborn, and we weren't able to play the intro like we usually do. So Quinn had to hold up his speaker to the microphone. So we adapted, we overcame, and here we all are. Thank you all.
This is awesome. Nice little
Thank
crowd.
you so much for being with us here at Elon tonight, and thanks to the folks who are going to be streaming this. We had a lot of folks who wanted to come here and be with us, but maybe couldn't make the drive from Charlotte or down east or up in the western part of the state. So for those of you listening at home at a later date, we hope this ages well.
Sound all right out there for everybody? We're good? Cool. This should be fun. Well, this is our second Live and Hollerin'.
That's right. The event's so nice, we did it twice.
That's right. So this one's titled, What the Hell Happened? As many of y'all know, we had an election a little less than a week ago. So here we are, and everybody looks thrilled about it.
I was like, people are gonna hate me because I'm actually not. I'm not in a bad mood. Like I know that this is a very difficult time for many people, and we're all feeling lots of different feelings. But one of my hopes for this event is that I can rub off on some of you guys, and that our guest speaker can rub off on some of you guys, and we can leave this space feeling maybe, if not better, at least not
I'm going to be
worse.
Cynical as hell. I'm telling you.
So yin and yang up here. Okay, so do we just jump right in? Is there anything you want to talk about, or can we just go right into?
Yeah, I'm
guest?
with it. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm excited about this one. You know, leading up to this election, in our DMs, we were getting a lot of messages about who's going to win, what's going to happen, and then we don't really know, right? It was a lot of astrology.
I was going to say, I just want to say, because I know you're not going to admit this, Quinn was hitting the betting markets hard for RFK Jr.
And so then I think for me and a lot of people in this room, instead of feeling disappointed or shocked or surprised like we did in 2016, I felt just it really heavy on my heart because I was in with a lot of you guys and a lot of our listeners that was putting in the work, right? Like the Democratic headquarters was always hustling and bustling. We were out doing the other side 9 to 1 with the ground game and door knocking. And so it felt really, really personal to me this time and really heavy because it's like, how can this happen when there's just so many people that are doing things? And so when the results came in on Tuesday night, which was different than 4 years ago, right? We had to wait a couple weeks. I didn't feel surprised. Like I knew that this was a very real possibility. The polls pretty much nailed it with it being a coin toss. You know, take away the electoral map and how that looks like he just took over. But having a decisive win with a popular vote and not winning a single swing state, it really hurt. It hit, and I think everybody's justified to feel that way. That like, damn it, boy, what just happened? But I'm not the data guy. I don't know as much as our guest here, so I'm real excited. I know Daniel and I, we were planning on this to have Mr. Blair Reeves from Carolina Ford come up here, regardless of the outcome. So hopefully we can get a little insight of kind of what the hell just happened.
Yeah, so a lot of you guys may have seen Blair on your Instagram or TikTok feed. He was doing this before we were doing this, and I think I speak for both Quinn and myself when I say that he was something of an inspiration to us. And when we saw him get up there and kind of break down some really complex issues, it kind of spoke to me in the sense of like, well, I could maybe do that. And so we're really tickled that Blair's here tonight, and I want to read you a bit of a biography about him, some things you may not know. For example, Blair is currently a wanted fugitive in 36 states and American Samoa. So no, by day, Blair tinkers with HubSpot or GitHub or GitSpot. One of the something you'll have to. I don't know. Blair does something with computers by day, but at night he leads Carolina Forward, which if you've heard the podcast before, you know it's a nonpartisan organization dedicated to building a more, I don't know what we say in the intro, but a better North Carolina, essentially. A place where more people, prosperous, place where more people want to live and where people want to stay once they've moved here. So Blair holds a degree in economics and religion from the University of Virginia. He's got an MBA from Duke, and he has experience as a Peace Corps volunteer in Cameroon. So he's a cosmopolitan international man of mystery. He's now settled in North Carolina with his wife and 2 young children. He brings a wealth of knowledge and a really insightful perspective to the table. We're excited to dive into today's conversation and ask all the questions that we've been wondering, again, namely, what the hell happened? So with that, let's welcome Blair Reeves, everybody.
Yeah.
How y'all doing?
So Blair, we didn't get a chance to do a whole full sound check with you, but just you've done this, you're a pro. Just make sure that you're like not quite eating the mic, but like nibbling it just a little bit.
Like check.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And also, folks, you'll notice I've got a little frog in my throat, so just bear with me today. And if I've lost my voice, and if you find it, let me know and return it to its rightful owner. Blair, so maybe you'll disagree with this statement, but I would argue that politics is not sexy. Is politics sexy, first of all?
It kind of maybe depends who you ask.
Okay.
I don't think politics.
Politics is not sexy.
But,
It's messy, and honestly, a lot of folks maybe in this room would agree. Some of the time, most of the time, all the time, it kind of sucks a little bit.
well, people. So some people love politics. They eat and breathe and live it, and it's a huge part of their lives. And for me, it is not.
Can you pull the mic a little bit closer?
Yeah. Is that
I know
okay?
the folks here can hear you because it's a small room, but we're recording
Give the
this to our
audio.
laptop.
Yeah,
I just want to make
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, no. So some people love politics, and I love that for them. It's not something that I love a whole lot. I think that the thing about politics is that it is so many things roll up into one, right? It's like economics and human psychology and a little bit of like a morality play
And memes.
and memes and dank memes and so many, and there's so much. Lee Atwater, who was a pretty evil guy, in a lot of ways, way back in the day.
We just did a video on him.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
To be clear, he was a very smart politician and a political operator, and a very effective one for the Republican Party. And he always said that one thing about the thing about politics is that you have to understand everything. It is art, it is psychology, it is human fears and hopes and aspirations, and it is all that wrapped into one. How do you get people to do stuff? And that makes politics interesting, I think. And it also makes it, cut pretty deep, but it doesn't go your way because it's sort of a rejection of your values or kind of things you want it to be. And so it can be a lot of different things to different people.
Well, as a local elected official, deciding if we're going to fix a pothole or not is not sexy. Yeah. It's just not one of those gigs we get into.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you just said that you're not like some people. I mean, some people are just live and breathe politics, and that's all they have ever wanted to do, and that they're happy to be a goldfish in that pond. That's not you, but you spend an inordinate amount of your time doing politics.
Oh, well, I don't know. I think Quinn spends more of his time doing politics, given
Yes.
that you are an elected official. I read about politics. I make a very concerted effort not to make politics my life.
Could have fooled me. I mean, shit.
I was going to say, I think 40,000 social media followers beg to differ.
No, I'm reading a really great a novel right now called The Ministry of Time. It's a cool fiction.
What's it called again?
The Ministry of Time. I'll tell you all about it a little bit later on. I have a great. I don't read too many books about politics. I try to have a very more varied media diet than that. But it's important. There's this big. You might have seen it around there. There's this big gulf that exists. Probably existed for a long time, but exists today as well, between people who read or follow news and people who don't. And historically, most people don't. Right? I mean, look, we're all, you're raising your family, you're working, you're living your life. Like, you just don't have time to read about what some idiot in Raleigh is doing. And that, you can understand that. And, or certainly, it's become much harder for people to follow what's happening in their state capital, let alone your county seat or your town.
Yep.
Right? Our media, environment, especially in North Carolina, is getting worse. It's degraded quite a bit in the last 20, 30 years. And everything's being more nationalized now, right? And now people have you know what Matt Gaetz had for breakfast,
Sure.
right? Like what Trump's doing, what Biden's doing, what Kamala's doing, whatever, all this stuff.
Even if you're not politically engaged, people know what's happening with that.
And the most valuable stuff is the stuff that breaks through, right? And that's the role of memes and everything else. But that's all fine and good. But the problem is that displaces stuff we know about anything else that's going on.
Sure.
And of course, what happens in Raleigh is going to affect your life a lot more. So that is the gap that we try to fill.
So two things that stuck out to me there. One, the Ministry of Time sounds like the successor to the Space Force. Like that's what's next. The second thing is, okay, so and maybe, I don't know if we're about to move on from this or not, but I want to linger on this. As somebody who
like the Cranberries
does politics, not into politics. That's good. Do you feel like you have a political identity? Like, how would you describe yourself? Because I feel like right now we live in a time, the Washington Post just did this thing where they were like, take this quiz and find out what, which of these 12 political things are you? Like, or if we had a multi-party system, which would you be part of the Patriot Party or the Tree Hugger Party or the, Dad Bod Party? I don't know
get
what.
Away from the two-party system.
Right. So if maybe you reject labels entirely, maybe you mean the no labels party.
No, I think that so I grew up so Waffle House is a big part of my identity.
2 a.m. Waffle House
my
or like Sunday morning Waffle House?
I grew up, so I'm from Western Virginia, little town, and the Waffle House I grew up with is not the well lit family eating establishment.
Mm-hmm.
That's so many people today. You take your kid to Waffle House today, they have no idea. The Waffle House I grew up in was like a smoky, greasy trucker's bar.
That's right.
That I ditched school all the time to go eat in.
I saw the Ying Yang twins in high school. They stopped at the local Waffle House in Mebane.
What?
Yeah, it was nuts.
You're like a shishi little Waffle House.
That's right.
Yeah, no. So I describe myself. I'm a Waffle House Democrat, right?
Explain.
You see a cross section of life at any Waffle House, especially on a major interstate, right?
Sure.
You have people from all walks of life because people everyone's gonna eat. And I don't think that I don't fit very well, and I don't think most people fit in really well to a political label. Like you see, one thing you see in our dialogue right now is a lot of people are very bifurcated. You're on the left, you're on the right, and there's a perception that most Republicans are super extreme.
Yeah.
Their perception is that most Democrats are very extreme. There's a lot of interesting polling research showing among base Democrats, among base Republicans, they think that the other side is super out there, and that their side, we're the moderate center, they're the weirdos. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that most people on both sides there's people on the left, people on the right, but they're closer together than everyone really thinks. The extreme voices really have kind of taken over a lot of the tenor. And some of that has to do with our media ecosystem. Some of that has to do with social media and some other stuff.
I don't know. They're the weirdos.
What has happened is in especially in the Republican Party in North Carolina, the weirdos have kind of taken over the asylum a little bit, and that's how you get a Mark Robinson. That's how you get a Dan Bishop. That's how you get a Michelle Morrow. That's how you get a lot of different people down the ballot. And one thing to get in, I don't want to jump the gun.
No, do it. Jump the gun.
One of the things you saw in this election is that, so extremism does carry an electoral cost.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mark Robinson lost in the biggest landslide election since 1980. But you know what? Michelle Morrow lost. Didn't lose that much, though.
Yeah, but so my intuition is that simply many people went into that booth, saw her name, liked the alliteration, or saw or saw one of her signs. You'll notice she put a very photogenic picture of non-threatening white soccer mom who wants to speak to the manager. That was her campaign sign. And if you don't read the News and Observer, right? If you don't,
it was hidden down ballot too.
It was hidden down ballot, right? I mean, I really think that there are just many. I don't think a candidate like Michelle Morrow gets to 48-49% because people hear, oh, she thought we should execute Obama publicly. Yeah. Well, she's got my vote.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mark Robinson established a floor in his election. That means it says that no matter what you do as a Republican candidate, no matter what you say, and you will get 40% of the vote no matter what, right? And you can, you know, we don't have to go into ways, but you know, that's the floor, right? And that's after Josh Stein didn't have to spend all his millions of dollars, you know, letting people know, but he did because he wants to make sure people know about that, and that's important. Michelle Morrow got 48 point something percent of the vote. She lost. That's important to say.
She won Alamance County by like 80 votes.
Yeah, but only by 80 votes.
Yeah,
right.
And to your point earlier on, by the way, Alamance.
And Robinson lost Alamance.
Josh Stein won Alamance County.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
By the way, you guys already know this, I'm sure, but nationally, we had a 7-point shift towards the Republicans, towards Trump. North Carolina, we had a 2-point shift, so overperformance in a national environment. Alamance County got bluer. Year for 2020 by a little bit is a
0.2%.
But we shouldn't have.
But hang on, 0.3% shift towards the Democrats in a statewide environment where they shifted 2 points. That is not non-trivial.
Well, and is that based off of Trump victory and Stein, or just Trump?
The two-party vote, yeah, just two-party Trump versus Harris.
Okay,
right, and that's pretty remarkable. Alamance County is shifting really fast. It's Alamance, it's Cabarrus, it's Union County, it's a couple other ones as well. A lot of people are moving in, and this story is always portrayed as people moving here, changing, you know, the votes or whatever, and that's part of it. But it's also people who are already here who are changing their minds, right? Who is deciding, like, maybe this has gotten a little out of hand, right?
Man, I like your optimism on that one, because that one is because my whole life I've heard, like, since I've started getting involved, it's always like people are moving to Alamance County. It's gonna change. Like, just keep waiting, and I'm tired of waiting. And it seems like, especially with this past election, it just made so much sense of the extremisms that we had to just scare people. But I think that's also kind of why Harris underperformed with a lot of things. Because if you look like in 94 with Clinton, and then you look in 2010, so Clinton and Obama, they both got beat up in their midterms, right? So Houses flipped, Senate's flipped. And the Democrats had to pivot. Well, the Biden-Harris administration didn't have to pivot, right? They won in 2018. We knocked Trump on his butt by crippling him a little bit.
Yeah.
2020 we win. 2022 it wasn't this giant red wave that we thought was going to come around. So I think we, instead of talking kind of to the people when you were going about the media, we weren't talking to the everyday person. They really doubled down on the coalition of anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, thinking that, you know, after the Dobbs decision, scaring people that democracy was on the line. They were really for people that were politically aware and politically active and was following that and understood what it was. Because it wasn't kitchen table items. Like, they didn't move to, like, how are we going to get eggs cheaper? You know, Trump would just say it. He's like, you want eggs cheaper? Vote for me. And it worked for the everyday person hearing it daily in and out. So
I mean, I think there was an effort to do that, like price gouging, right? There was, which is still too abstract. Like, that's still
super abstract. And
but I don't think it was neglected entirely. I just don't think it was simplified to the point. You know, I mean, it was like 8% of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows, right?
Yeah, but
price gouging's
no
not going to work
right?
there. Yeah,
like and justifiably so, because it was hard to pivot because you had the war in Ukraine, and then you had Gaza in October of 2023. So a lot of foreign affair issues stuff was
Blair
happening.
made this point in a recent video that you did, which is something that I think every single person in this country needs to bear in mind, especially those of us who feel a sense of surprise, is that this is what happened in this election. The incumbent party getting taken out at the ballot has happened in every developed democracy this year, and on both sides of the political spectrum. Right,
Japan,
in Japan,
South Africa,
it was the right wing
South
government.
Korea, Britain,
for sure. In France, it was the left wing government, which managed to hold on, but took a lot of hits in Parliament. And Britain, the Tories, the most successful political. I was actually this past weekend. I was talking with somebody who works for the Conservative Party in the UK, and he's currently advising the Turkish government right now, that's a whole other bag of cats we could get into. But I was asking him, I was like, "What happened this past year?" And he just said, "What happened was we were the most successful political party in the history of modern democracies, and we happen to be in power in a year when it wasn't a good year to be in power.
Yeah, I mean, I can get down with that. I could get down that it, no matter who we ran, could have done that.
Yeah.
It was just gonna happen. But it still just felt like there wasn't, from the people I've talked to from my high school and just the everyday voter, they gave zero shits about the Dobbs decision. They're like, yeah, I feel like women should have a choice, but not enough to sway them to do this. Yeah, I like democracy, but not enough to fear that this is going to be taken away. It was like, I know I had more money in my pocket, period, and the border, right? So the inherent racist system was there for people. And I don't think there was, because even when we did the bipartisan border bill that didn't even pass, like it took Biden until the end of January to really endorse it and get behind it. And even then he didn't push it hard, right? Because you saw where Clinton kind of shifted to more right. You saw where Obama was trying to do a deficit spending and trying to get a little bit more conservative with that to just try to affect it. And I really think the Democrat Party felt like this anti-Trump is enough.
Would be enough, right? And we didn't do the triangulation. We didn't do the massaging of the messaging. I mean, what do you think about that, Blair?
I think that the context here really matters, right? That like you said, every incumbent party in every wealthy democracy in the world has lost power over the last 2 or 3 year or two, really. So it was there's that context in there. If Kamala Harris would be able to pull this through, it would have been
in 100 days
global trend, which is huge. I think that Kamala Harris has dealt kind of a bad hand.
Absolutely.
And she played it very, very well.
She was given the poison chalice.
She had 200 days to stand up a campaign. She raised $1 billion in that time.
It's incredible.
She underperformed in blue states where she didn't have to perform that well. She overperformed in the battleground states.
Yep.
She was also against a candidate who's been campaigning for 10 years.
Well, I don't think this is Harris's fault by any means.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that also I think that it stands to reflect on what they're doing. So the Democrats, whenever they lose, right? It's there is a wrenching of clothing, rending of
Yes.
and
Spider-Man
what did we do
memeing.
wrong? Why don't people love us? Why don't they like us more? Right? And when the Republicans lose, it's fuck your feelings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
We did nothing wrong. Fuck you guys. You guys got to edit this video here.
No.
And so there's all that. So like 140 million people voted. Like the difference is like 140,000 people over a couple of states. Like there's a million reasons why people do different things, and there's no one reason why the Democrats lost. They had a turnout problem. There's that. I do think, to your point, maybe the Democrats could do different things differently. For example, inflation.
They could try to win.
Inflation, economy. Well, they did, right? They did. I think they did a pretty good job in a lot.
In North Carolina.
But to your point, so inflation, economy, the biggest points out there. One of your former guests, Dr. Tracy Cottom.
Oh, she was great.
Yeah.
Just recently.
She had a really good view on this, I think. Which
Was this her recent TikTok with the guy that her DoorDash
she
driver?
said, like,
or
look,
whatever?
people are saying inflation, it's the economy, it's the prices, because that's the language that is out there. We've been offered, right? What they're saying is, I don't make enough money. Right. What they're saying is, there's these things I want that I don't have enough money for.
And that's a Bernie message, right? Like that's something that Bernie could. What I'm saying is that's not inherently a fruit for MAGA to pick.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the MAGA response to that is it's because of the immigrants. Here's someone for you to hate,
right?
And I think the left message is, well, you're giving the corporations and price gouging and structural problems in our economy, right? So housing is a big one. No one really knows how to talk about housing. It's really at the root of, I've been housing pilled in a lot of ways. Like it is at the root of so many problems that we have economically, socially, and otherwise. No one knows how to talk about it. Everyone wants more housing. They don't want any more housing where they live. They want, we want to send them to Devon or something like that, So that's an example of what I mean. So I think that the Democrats could do a lot better job at a lot of different things. I think the Democrats do a much better job of introspection on these kinds of things when they lose. And when they, but you go back to 2020, Biden wins the popular vote by 4.5 points. He wins pretty decisively. and the Republicans say, well, let's just run Trump again in 4 years. And that would have seemed insane in 2020, but they did that, and it worked. And I tell people, like, I was in college in 2004, and
brave of you to admit.
I know, and I remember election night 2004, and that was when Bush, who won, he won re-election. Right. It was narrow, really narrow, but he won. And I think the Republicans won control of Congress and all this other stuff.
They did.
And the big thing then was we now have a permanent Republican majority. That's it. Close the doors. That's the show. And if you had told anybody in like November, December 2004 that in a couple of years this black dude with a weird name is gonna roll up and win in a landslide victory. Control of both houses of Congress and the presidency for 8 years, people would have said you're nuts. So all of which is just to say, I think that people, you have to remember that politics is a cycle, right? It is. This has happened. It's like the Battlestar Galactica. This has happened before. It'll happen again.
Yeah, but this just feels different because I do think Obama was the catalyst to what we're seeing in this MAGA extremists, right? Like the white replacement theory is really happening.
We elected a black dude and everybody lost.
Right. Now it's happening, and so we got this extreme hate that came from that and worry from white dudes.
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick? So yes, we're a lot of what we're seeing, I think, is a reaction to that. And I think that's true nationally, all the way down locally. But I also think I would not describe, and I want to get to state politics in a second, but just to maybe close the loop on the national stuff, I would not describe what we're seeing as decisive. I would not say that Donald Trump or MAGA has a mandate. Dude won a plurality of votes in Wisconsin. He won a plurality of votes in Michigan. Didn't win a majority in either of those places. You want to talk about a mandate? Look at Richard Nixon in 1972. Dude got over 400 electoral college votes, right? So, I mean, I think it's really easy to catastrophize this.
Sure.
But Democrats love to catastrophize about everything. Like they're kind of a neurotic base generally, right? And
speak for yourself.
But no, I mean, I don't see this as an extinction level event. I think the feeling that Democrats get with this extinction level, because I agree with you with running candidates and campaigns coming after this, there's chances. But I mean, we're getting ready to have Trump, MAGA, to elect potentially 5 Supreme Court justices. So my lifetime is going to be few and far between to see if there's going to be, and most people in this room, to see that get back. So that's I feel like the catastrophe of all of this, because I have full faith that it's going to flip and we're going to break the majority in 2026. So I don't think it's decisive in that regard, like you're speaking about. But it does. I mean, I see where some of the neurotic Democrats are freaking out with, because we're not going to see Dobbs overturned, right? Yeah. Even if we do get a majority in the House and Senate in 2026, it's first we need 60 votes. We're just barely going to scoot in. So there's not going to be codifying it from the House. And then even if it does, my fear is there's going to be savvy lawyers that take it to the Supreme Court saying you've already ruled because the Dobbs decision, they can't do this legislation.
Oh, sure they can.
Maybe.
Yeah, they can.
They can try.
I mean, Congress can do whatever it wants, right? But I know I hear your point.
Sure.
Yeah, so sure. I mean, Democrats worry about everything, and they should worry about, like, there's stuff to worry about, right? All I say is that there are people who always say after every election, that's it, close the barn door, we're done. Yeah. And politics doesn't work like that, right? And there's always another election. It is always a push and pull, and which is why I tell people, like, don't, the people who do obsess over politics, I think that's very unhealthy. Like, find something else to do. I definitely pay attention, but like. Do something else too, because like this stuff will drive you crazy.
Instead of eating 1 Valium, eat 3.
It'll drive you crazy if you let it, and that's an issue that people just have to be aware of.
So let's talk about North Carolina real quick, and not even from like an electoral standpoint. I feel like we've maybe beaten that horse to death, or beaten that dead horse to deather, whatever the superlative is.
Deather.
That was my favorite band in middle school was Deather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, one issue that I think a lot of folks like that doesn't get talked about in North. And we talk about like our public schools are being defunded. We talk about gosh, what do you think? The other, I mean, that's a big one right there. The casinos, depending on where you live, comes up a lot. But like an issue that I think doesn't get near enough airtime, corruption. There's a lot of corruption going on. And I'm wondering if you could maybe can we go there in this conversation next? Talk to us about okay, cool. I was hoping you'd be the guy to ask for this.
Well, before we hit too much on that, let's run down what we have now in North Carolina. We broke the supermajority, so that's cool. Even though we do have a Cecil Brockman, we potentially still can break the supermajority. So that means Josh Stein has a veto vote. And then in the executive branch, we have 5 out of the 10 seats, which is really cool. And is Rachel Hunt, is she the first lady lieutenant governor?
Beth Perdue.
Was she lieutenant governor?
Yeah, Beth Perdue is lieutenant governor. Am I tripping?
Somebody fact checked us on all of this, but we do.
I remember that because in 2000, oh gosh, was it 2004? I remember like I was
you were being potty trained or something like that. Right?
Yeah, I was peeing at that Cheerio. I was aiming for that Cheerio, and I thought, if I was 18, I'd vote for Beth Perdue. Yeah. And then I thought, and then if I was 18, I'd also know how to do this.
So we had some good seats. We had friend of the holler, Beth Helfrich. She flipped a seat, which was really cool to have. So there was some good wins, and we saw North Carolina, and Harris only had 290 less votes than Biden did in 2020. So that's good. Yeah. I mean, Trump had 1.3 million more, but it still is good that we hit that level. So to your point, and me being less cynical, you're right. North Carolina has some blue heart in it. I'm just ready for it to be out.
The Democrats had a pretty decent election in 2024 in North Carolina. They could have been a lot better, and they could have been a lot worse. They could have been a lot worse, right? So all of that. One thing I don't think that most people are aware of is how bad the corruption is in Raleigh. So if for those of you who might have lived here for a long time, the Democrats before 2010, they had their own corruption issues. They had a House Majority Leader Jim Black. He went to jail. They passed off like money in an IHOP bathroom, like all this sort of stuff.
It was actually Waffle House, if anybody recalls.
It was called the Jim Black, and the other guy's name was like Michael Decker or something like that. So it was the Black and Decker scandal.
Wait a second. So you're a Waffle House Democrat, and this guy was also a Waffle House Democrat. It sounds like. Oh, it was IHOP.
Yeah.
Very different.
Very different, bro.
Nope.
Yeah, my feelings about IHOP are not compatible with the family-friendly show. So
not that big of a tent.
So look, I mean, but the big difference was they went to jail. They went to jail. Mike Easley was governor. He ran into some corruption issues, and they took away his law license. And they did it over one. He failed to properly report. He reported, but he improperly reported a helicopter ride by a supporter, from a supporter. And for that, they took away his law license.
You say Democrats took away his law license, or
the
state
system,
the state apparatus,
the State Bar Association,
right?
Yeah. And so that was, so there were corruption issues before, and I want to be really clear: like the Democrats are not like the angel party, right? And anything like that. But the corruption you see today in Raleigh is off the charts. And what is different now than it was 15 or 20 years ago is that the systems of oversight and accountability that used to exist in Raleigh no longer exist. Some of them no longer exist at all. Many of them have been completely
what do you mean by that?
Dismantled. So, for example, now if you file a complaint against a state agency, for example, the State Board of Elections, as one example, though this applies to many different state agencies, that complaint is now confidential. It is not public record. No one finds out, one, that it's been filed. Two, what the resolution is. In some cases, even the complainant, the guy who submits the complaint, they don't find out what happens to it. We at Carolina Forward, we have submitted multiple complaints to the State Board of Elections about groups and people in our state who have been breaking election law. One example of that being Mark Walker.
Our congressman up until
ex-congressman.
up until relatively recently.
Right,
Yeah.
Mark Walker, he hired a bus back in the 2022 election. Win the judges, and plaster all over the sides. He has like judges' names and faces on there. Win the judges, right? And they drive around everywhere, statewide. They're giving rides to the candidates from campaign stop to campaign stop. All this stuff never reported as an in-kind contribution, not as an independent expenditure. Nothing. Totally dark, and that's illegal.
But doesn't that just seem like semantics? And maybe if what everybody's seeing now with like Democrats, if we focus on that shit and not focus on what everybody's talking about, that's why we're losing.
Well, I think people hate I think people hate corruption. First of all,
Yes.
and there are better examples than that too. So the state budget right now.
Can we talk about the Tim Moore chicken farm?
Oh, I love talking about the Tim Moore chicken farm.
Because that's my personal favorite example.
Well,
of
so
corruption in
Siler
North
City is
Carolina.
pretty close to me.
Yeah.
So down in Siler, for those of you who don't know, the long and short of it is that Tim Moore, the Republican House Speaker, until for another few months or so, he bought a chicken plant.
As you do.
As you do, down in Siler, and he turns around and sells it to Mount Air, the big multinational poultry conglomerate,
As you do.
for like 10 times the price. Boom. And he makes a buttload of money. And the CEO of Mount Air just happens to be the biggest Republican donor from out of state, shoveling money to his whole caucus and all this other stuff.
It's a coincidence.
And while he did, and in the interim, while he owned that property, he also used his influence as the House Speaker, one of the most powerful people in the state government. He went to the Department of Environmental Quality here in the state, and he bumped up this property to the top of their list for this state program that rehabilitates properties, basically cleans them up. We have a state program in North Carolina where they'll like go in and clean up an industrial property that you can't sell if you rehabilitate it, and you
With taxpayer money?
With taxpayer money.
Okay.
For a bunch of environmental regulations because it was filthy. It makes the property more valuable. And that's good, right? We want to clean up stuff and make property more valuable. He takes his own property, puts it at the top of the list, uses that, and now and then he makes a lot of money. So that's an example. There's I'm not kidding. There are thousands of examples like that. Jason Sane, he is was until very recently a member of the state house from Lincoln County. Guy is dirtier than I don't know. You can buy a good word for it, but he's dirtier than a pig in shit, and he is.
That works.
He has enriched himself and his family at the trough of the state government of North Carolina. There are a lot of examples like that, and one thing that has changed is the auditor's office hasn't gone after him. Republicans hold an enormous amount of political power in North Carolina. If you are anywhere connected to the state government, they can make your life hard.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people want to put their neck out, right? Beth Wood was the auditor. Maybe she doesn't want to look too carefully at these ledgers for this project or that one because she knows it's going to piss off some people in the legislature, and they can take away her power. They write the laws. Right.
Well, to your point, Quinn, when it comes to how do we deal with these things when we need to be messaging this way and all that, I think anti-corruption is a bipartisan winning issue. I think people hate cheaters. There's just human nature, right? Like psychology research shows that we hate freeloaders, we hate cheaters as a species.
But when you have to explain that, so if it's going past more than 2 sentences, if you're knocking on the door or just talking to somebody, people just zone out. It's just not a thing. Even though people would agree, that's kind of fucked up.
I think I can explain it in 2 sentences. An undecided voter comes to me and says, why should I be worried about Tim Moore? And I'd say because his salary as an elected representative is $14,000 a year and he drives a Maserati. Yeah. And I think right there, that person wants to know more. And that person is
will he make my eggs cheaper?
I mean, Quinn's right.
No, I mean, no. But actually, I think we're both right because I think what this comes down to is ultimately and this is why I love Carolina Forward, and this is what I think you and I are trying to accomplish with the Holler, which is we need more informed people, and the way to reach them is through platforms like this, because I don't think the folks who, in this hypothetical we're engaging with are, I think where they're found is on social media or in the line at the grocery store, and maybe you're not like me. I'm the kind of person who will be like, well, I'll tell you the real reason why your eggs are cheaper and your egg more expensive, but
Nerd.
yeah, I know, right? No, believe me. Look, if the shoe fits.
No, look, I mean, the reality is, here in the South, we have a long history of corruption in our politics. Political scientists have done research on this, and they'll tell you in other parts of the country, they treat voters there treat corruption differently. So Upper Midwest, the Northeast, parts of the West Coast, they treat corruption quite differently. You treat corruption differently in states with more divided politics, where there's more divided power. But one reality in North Carolina, and the South generally, voters tolerate more corruption because they're used to more corruption. The other part of it is that here we have divided government between the executive and the legislature. I think that Attorney General Jeff Jackson will have a real opportunity if he wants to take it.
Sure.
Because the Attorney General does have power, and he can have power to look into some of this stuff. The auditor also has that power. Unfortunately, the auditor is now Dave Boliak, and he's not going to look into anything.
But he was a registered Democrat at one point.
I mean,
up until this election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big secret that people don't want to hear is that Dave Boliak is actually a Democrat that changed his. This is why he almost lost his own primary. He changed his registration because he wants to get elected. So the moment he wants to get elected, he changed his registration and starts talking about DEI. And he spent like $500,000 of his own money to win a primary. And like he doesn't, he's the kind of guy who doesn't really believe in anything. So he's going to do this. But the reality is that I don't think people hate corruption, but the thing is, it's sort of like gerrymandering. All right.
Everybody hates it. Kinda.
Everyone thinks they hate gerrymandering, but everyone thinks the other side's doing it. Right, so all the Republican base in North Carolina, partly because they're not very well informed, they think that the Democrats are the corrupt party. They think that Roy Cooper is rolling in dough, and they think that is the problem. You ask a lot of Republican voters in North Carolina today, believe that gerrymandering is a problem, but that it's the Democrats doing it, and you tell them. No Democrat in North Carolina has drawn any election map in North Carolina since 2003, and they just don't believe you.
Yeah.
And you can't. There's a distortion reality field you really can't pierce in some kinds of ways. But I think that corruption is an important thing for people to know. But I don't think it sways that many votes.
Well, it depends on if it directly affects them, right? Like, I mean, when Steve Troxler has been in, the commissioner of agriculture, North Carolina had the largest insurance fraud for farms in the country. And people want to bitch about their insurance and how much the premiums have went up. What's a direct cause of that? But nobody cares because they don't see the farms and they don't feel the money that's coming into it. So I think it's just really hard messaging. But going back to what you were saying, Daniel, I do think there's a place for people like Carolina Ford and the Holler to talk about it, and very niche to go after it.
Make it sexy.
Well, it can't be, right? I mean, other than with your face.
You make it sexy, Daniel.
I just don't think it's
speechless.
Thanks, Mom.
It's not going to win voters, right? Like, that's not the thing that wins voters. And this is going to sound wild because I'm not a fan of lying.
What are you about to say?
But, it might be time because I think Democrats try to be very virtuous. And I think we've all had somebody knock on our door to try to sell us cookies or tell us about the Book of Mormon. And we're just like,
I love that show.
The good word.
The show is good. But we're like, yeah, I'm busy. Not today. I don't have the money. Like, we just say a little white lie. And I think that's what the Republicans did really good, especially with Trump, with what happened. Well, there was a lot, right? But so Democrats just saying white lies in the sense of, you want your eggs cheaper? Vote for me. You want this? I can do it. And just taking it, even without any explanation, just saying yes and going and knowing, because the Democrats this year did have an economic plan to give middle class Americans more money in their pockets. But when you talk about opportunity economy, when you talk about we're going to go after businesses that are price gouging, like I would bet 51% of America can't spell gouging. And so it's just very
We're really
tough.
ragging on America here, y'all. I mean,
But it's true.
No, Quinn, let me kind of recast what I hear you saying.
Yeah,
here.
beat me up.
I think you make a good point. I think that there are two different roles here. One is the role of people to inform the public, inform voters, inform
Pundits.
people, right? And that creates, knowing that gerrymandering exists, knowing that the corruption exists, knowing what is happening to our public school system, what's happening to the highway fund or whatever, all this stuff. That's important, but that lays the landscape and the conditions for politics. And politics kind of sits on top of that. And politics is what the campaigns do. A campaign says, you know X, Y, and Z, right? Well, here's what I'm going to do about it. If you don't know X, Y, and Z, then they're mildly speaking Greek, right? You might be saying, and that's where you get to the inflation thing, right? Do you know that Trump passed the biggest corporate tax cut we've had since Reagan? And that's one reason why, your prices didn't go down. One reason why we have inflation is because they passed a very large stimulus bill under the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress. Do you know that? No. If you knew that, if you don't know that, then the inflation is a Biden thing, right?
Right.
So it's a laying the landscape for what people know and what people think are true. And you do politics on top of that. What campaigns do? Campaigns are always going to do what they have to do to win. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter.
Sure.
Right? And I think that Democrats and Republicans, voters alike, should hold their campaigns to a high standard. And I think that the Democrats do a better job with that than the Republicans do.
I think so.
But to be fair, there are a bunch of Democrats saying some stupid stuff out there as well. And there always will be, right? That's just politics. The campaigns will do whatever they want or have to do to win. But what they build on top of is that landscape of an informed public. If people are informed, then we're going to have better politics. And that goes back to Jefferson. That's everything else, right? But when people don't know stuff, that's when politicians can take advantage, can exploit that ignorance, and that's when we see a lot of chickens coming home to roost today.
So then kind of heading into our Q&A as we kind of land this plane, what does the future look like for, broadly speaking, North Carolina?
This light's stupid, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
really
this
hate
light
it.
is... this light's libertarian. That was a cheap joke. As we, the future of North Carolina, broadly speaking, the future for, if you're a Democrat in North Carolina, what does the immediate future look like? We have an election next year, municipals. We have a midterm in 2 years. Let's go there, and then let's open it up for a little bit of Q&A.
Yeah. So I'm optimistic about North Carolina generally. One thing you have to remember is that North Carolina there are two models here, right? There's the Virginia model, right, where you see, okay, all these suburbs are growing, people are, we're attracting lots of new people. Eventually, the state is going to grow more and more and more blue, and eventually Democrats are going to take it over, and there's that model. There's a Florida model. Florida model is, people are moving in, but they're all voting Republican. And the state gets redder and redder and redder. The state Democratic Party collapses, and it becomes a safe red state. And right now, we're hoping to get more clarity. We wrote a blog about this. You might have seen it. But we were hoping for more clarity and from this election. And there really wasn't any because, Trump won the state by a slim margin. Josh Stein and a bunch of Democrats also won the state by a pretty good margin. So we continue this divided sort of thing. You're going to have a pretty, the 2026 election is going to be a backlash on Trump. They're going to do stupid stuff, right? It's exactly like 2016 and 2018. 2018 was a backlash year. Democrats did very well. And the same thing is going to happen this time around as well. There are already people getting recruited and all this other stuff out there. Here in Alamance, you're going to have a competitive seat or two. that are going to be very important. And the thing that
for State House.
Yeah, for the State House, yeah. And I think that the thing to remember is that if democracy is like the shining city on a hill, right? For you, that's a Reagan thing.
No, I got you. No, I have my students read that speech.
No, it's good,
for
it's
sure.
good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If democracy is the shining city on the hill, politics is the sewer system beneath the city. It is grimy and it is kind of grody and nasty and it smells very good, but it is very important. It makes the city work. Mm-hmm. You can't have the city without the sewer system. You can't have democracy without politics. Politics, and this is kind of the thing that I always come back to when I get sick of politics and I go off and I want to read a book or something like that, which I highly recommend. I'm rewatching HBO's Silicon Valley right now. Highly recommend. It's a good decompress.
Tiger King is also good.
Oh yeah,
Chimp Crazy if we're talking HBO.
The thing I always remember is that politics is the essential human technology, right? Like back in our caveman days, when we had to decide, do we go to the hunting ground? Do we go to the grazing ground? Do we? For a while, humans just fought over it. Whoever has the biggest stick, we're gonna knock you over the head. And eventually, liberalism came along, and liberalism was like, well, let's talk it over. Let's take a vote, right? Figure it out, non-violently. Okay, we're going to the grazing ground today. We'll go to the hunting ground tomorrow. And that's politics, right? And that is transformed over the eons until what we have today, which is great. Like we don't, accepting Trump's coup on January 6th and stuff like that. That's what we want to avoid, solving our problems with violence. So politics, that's what politics is. And politics is gross. There are always compromises and there are always, there's no purity in politics. And you can't expect that from the people in it because it's not what the system incentivizes. We can hold them to a higher standard, but we can't always expect that. But that's what politics is. And politics makes the democracy work. And it is important to make the politics work reasonably well as best we can. We can't exempt ourselves out of the politics. And politics doesn't need to be Democrat, Republican, or whatever. Politics can just be, do I know everything that's going on? Am I going to share this with the people in my life? And I'm going to make choices on the basis of that I recognize are never perfect, but they are choices. And the choice not to vote is also a choice.
So you're saying that politics is more than just making a blue bracelet and wearing a blue bracelet
a little bit
now.
more, yeah.
Okay. So what can people in this room do? Trump took most of the categories other than black women in this race. Most everybody in here we're all white. What can, and live in suburbs and ride around in rural areas in Alamance County, what can we do? What can people in this room do leading up to 26 and stuff? Or do we just keep bitching and being mad?
I think there's a time and place to bitch, all right? Like, go for it.
Yeah.
It makes people feel better. I'd say, again, like, prioritize your own emotional health, right? Don't obsess over this stuff. It is important, but it's important that you are, emotionally healthy as well. And the Republicans actually do a better job of this. Republicans are much less stressed about politics, like as a general rule.
It makes me so mad.
I know.
God.
We need more boat parades.
Point proven, right?
Yeah. Fuck.
So there's. I think that one thing I do recommend people do is if you are white, remember that most white people vote Republican, and so before we begin, after every election, there's always this like, well, this demographic group voted this way, and this demographic group did this, and they try to describe why did the Latino men do this, why did the black men do this, why did the white women do that, whatever, right? And I recommend people try to avoid doing that because, like, first it's reductive, right? People are people, right? People are all complex creatures. But the other thing is that as white people, you got to recommend that, like, you got to remember that our community voted very Republican. So if you want to start somewhere, like, start with white people, right? And start with the people in your life. Like my people in my family voted for Trump, and they're not bad people.
Are you still going to Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're hosting, and like there is a time to like learn and understand and that sort of thing. And that with some people, there's a learning opportunity with. Some people there's not, right? And you have to understand where those lines are. And there are toxic people that maybe you want to just get rid of, but that's true in many parts of your life. But also understand that there are places that are kind of quasi-political, right? Someone's bitching about the migrants or whatever, bitching about taxes, whatever. You say, well, wait a minute, my kid goes to school. I'm glad I pay taxes.
Right.
I don't love paying taxes, but I don't mind paying taxes. I really don't. And part of that is because I know what my taxes do, right? There are quasi-political points like that out there. I do think that political engagement is useful. So if engaging with your local political party is on the table, that's great. Some people start their own organization. We made the mistake of doing that at Carolina Forward, and I'm glad that we did. Most people should not start their own organization. They should
don't reinvent the wheel.
Engage something that's already on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Look, parties are never perfect, but they are the vehicles through which we mediate a lot of our politics, and they are very useful. You guys in Alamance County are lucky to have a pretty good county party that does a lot of stuff. Not all counties are like that, by the way.
The one thing you didn't say is if we could or could not tell our Trump neighbor to fuck off. And I was just looking for an answer for that.
Keep shaking that magic 8 ball.
But we're coming up on time.
Yeah.
I would like to see if there's anybody that has any questions for Daniel and I or Blair. Blair's a wealth of knowledge. We're really grateful for you coming out. And for you all that listen to our show, most of y'all know you listen to the disclaimer as it comes out. Carolina Forward is a huge sponsor of us. They helped made this Hometown Holler possible for the last 11 months. And this is our season finale. So we will be back at the beginning of the year with the pod. We still will be on social media doing our stuff, and you'll be seeing Daniel's face. But this will air next Monday. If y'all listen on every Monday, we didn't have one today because this is it. But does anybody have any questions at all? Yeah, man.
I happen to notice a certain similarity between this election, where Kamala Harris lost, and 2016 when Hillary lost. So do you think there's some inherent?
Well, yeah, I'll go first with this and let
I
Blair
would
go.
love to answer part of this as well. Yeah.
So just to clarify, because I saw it too, and I think it was real quick for Democrats and alike to say that there was definitely some misogynisticness that happened, because you see areas where Biden overperformed Harris, or overperformed Hillary, and then in those same areas we saw Harris underperform Biden. So when you look at it, it's hard not to think that there's a misogynistic undertone and racist undertone to this. So I definitely see what you're feeling, but I would like them to give us an answer with it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say is I'm sure there are voters whose vote was swayed on the basis of race and sex. I think we saw that in North Carolina. I think there are a lot of things Mark Robinson didn't get away with because of the amount of melanin in his skin. I think that, I think a white Mark Robinson gets away with a lot more. One thing I will say, 2016, 2015, very similar time globally in politics in terms of anti-establishment anger. It was the year of Brexit. It was the year of the Labour Party in the UK having a giant election at a time when nobody thought the Labour Party was going to succeed against the Tories. If I thought more about it, I'm sure I could think of more instances globally. I mean, that was the year that Bernie Sanders comes on the scene with his anti-establishment economic populist rhetoric. And who thought that the professorial guy with the funny accent from Vermont who's an independent, was going to lead a sizable faction of the Democratic Party and become a contender to Hillary Clinton and all the money and all the political capital that she had. So I really look at it, again, not to say that sexism and misogyny and racism played no role, but I very much do look at it from the standpoint of 2016 also being a cycle when being an incumbent, being associated with the establishment, was practically a death sentence in any electorate across the world. Yeah.
Piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got any thoughts on that?
I mean, again, so there's no doubt that both Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris lost votes because they're women, right? It's obvious. But at the same time, and Kamala Harris because she's not white, right? The flip side of that, though, again, is that there are 140, 150 million voters. there are a lot of different confounding variables there. So how many did they lose? It's impossible to say. Different election variables, and she didn't really lose by that much.
Right.
It's we're talking, and Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. She won 3.5 million more Americans voted for her than the other guy.
True.
And I think that obviously that doesn't mean she won the presidency, but in a larger democratic sense, I think she won the election. And I think that really matters. And I think that Kamala Harris came very, very close. And in a different year, I think she might would have.
You are a ray of sunshine.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, Eric?
Clarify this. Did I read through CNN that Trump won this election with 4 million less votes than in
Yes.
2020?
Yes, right now, because in 2020, we had a lot of different provisions with mail-in ballots because of the pandemic. So it was a lot easier for people to vote, because I've been seeing a lot of conspiracy theorists that were really against, thinking the election was stolen in 2020. And, the math isn't adding up. There was 18 more million votes than there were this year. It's because it was just easier to vote, right? People could just mail in stuff and send it in. But, yeah, I think last time he had 79 million votes, and this time he's at 72, at 73, right there at it. So yeah,
Overall vote was way down.
There was a turnout deficit this cycle. A lot fewer, I think 12 million, million people didn't vote this cycle than they didn't voted in 2020. And we saw that in North Carolina. Turnout went down in a lot of counties, and that probably sank Kamala Harris.
Mecklenburg for sure.
Yeah.
Stacy.
Do you think it would have been possible to change things if the Biden administration had been more boastful about their policies? It seems like nobody knew the good that was going on, and it just seems like the misinformation was so prevalent that how do we move forward? How do we rectify that, going forward?
Blair's got a great answer for this, because I asked him the same question last week, because that was my thing, was the CHIPS Act, the American Rescue Plan, all this stuff that they delivered, and Blair said,
We got 4 minutes.
I don't know. I got my. I don't. I'm not sure I'm gonna get the right answer. But I think that one of the key jobs as president, as a political candidate, is to communicate what you did in a effective way. And Joe Biden did not do that. And why he did not or couldn't do that is up for people to decide. I don't know, but he didn't do it, and that's on him. Obama was pretty good about doing that stuff, and Kamala Harris is a much more effective communicator than Joe Biden was, and that really hurt her.
I promised Chris I would get his question, so we're going to do this real quick and we'll be done. Chris, what's your question?
Gotcha, yes. So I hear you say if we're white, start with white people to try to get them to change. I just wrapped up a campaign for county commissioner in which I was out there at the polls almost every day during early voting, and there was one group I could not reach, and that was white men. I would go up, talk to them, I would tell them I'm a veteran, give them all my details. They would be on board and excited. As soon as they found out I was Democrat, shut me down.
Yeah.
How do we break through with that one? Is there idea?
I don't think there's a secret sauce. So I think we have to start with white men, white women, because that is our circle, right? What I don't want to do is go up to Latino men, black men, and be like, "Why didn't you vote for Democrats?" Right? Or whatever. That's not.
You don't think that'll be helpful?
That's not a good look. I do think as a campaign matter, there are more gettable votes among women and among people of color. Right. That is, for Democrats, that is where the votes are. I mean, me as a person, I feel like I need to talk to more white people about what, and that could be white women. White women are also a lot more gettable than white men. But to your point, you're absolutely right. Any white dude knows that, right? But white guys are just, it's hard because there's a lot of dude stuff, and there's a lot of history, and
make more dick jokes.
My people.
That's one of our goals in the podcast for next season, by the way. We've actually talked about it. More dick jokes.
Our people, Southern white men, we have voted against our self-interest for centuries. That is what we do, and maybe we'll not do that one day. I don't know.
I'll help you with this one, Chris, or give you some insight from my perspective. So it's a long game and it sucks. But I have some neighbors that are definitely super conservative. They had Trump signs. They voted Trump. But we have a great relationship. They vote for me as their elected official, and then they trust me. So it was right before Election Day, or it was during early voting, and they were getting ready to go vote. He pulled up into my yard, and we talk as we do, and they trust me. I've built this type of trust by showing them that I care about the community. And he was like, Quinn, I'm voting for Trump. I was like, I know you're voting for Trump. I know you, but do this for me though. And I listed Stein and Mo Green and then our county commissioners and our school board. And we went trick-or-treating, knocked on their door. And, you know, of course I make some remark about his beautiful sign in his front yard. But he was like, but I voted for everybody you told me to. And so that's making just strides of just that trust, because they are, I think, just going to be blinded by the national narrative. As local candidates, we get beat up so hard. I'll knock on a door for a municipality run, and they were like, you want to take my babies, and you want to kill, take the guns and all this shit. And it's like, well, no, right? And then building that trust really just helped in that regard. But it sucks because we want it now, but it's a long game. It's constantly showing up into these spheres of people that look like us and like showing up with their fingernails painted, be like, yeah, I'll shoot a gun too. And we all like peace standing up. Sometimes I sit down, but it's cool.
All right, so rapid fire raffle because we got to get out of here. Joe Jaron, get you a beautiful cap. Laurie Smith. Anaya.
Yeah, look at this. This is fun.
And then for all the marbles, the Cup Noodles Campfire S'mores with natural and artificial flavors.
Thank you. Thanks, Lord.
Eric Smith, my uncle. Oh my gosh. Hey,
Do the TS Design closing. TS Design closing.
yes, this is yours. We also want to thank TS Designs for giving us our amazing t-shirts this year. We got some shirts over here. If you guys want to support the holler, come by, talk to us, grab a sticker. You can snag a shirt. We got Venmo, whatever you need to use to pay for it. But if you just want your own awesome t-shirt, talk to Eric Henry over here. Alamance County's premier apparel, TS Designs. They have a totally ethical supply chain from dirt to shirt. Check them out. They're awesome. In the words of our friend Lindsey Graham, thank you all for coming out.